About 83% of the American people, including majority Democrats, support voter ID laws.
Well, yeah, the voter ID laws that, first, each state can have its own voter ID laws, and some do and some don't. But secondly, what they are proposing in this so-called SAVE Act is like Jim Crow 2.0. They make it so hard to get any kind of voter ID that more than 20 million legitimate people, mainly poorer people and people of color, will not be able to vote under this law. We will not let it pass in the Senate. We are fighting it tooth and nail. It's an outrageous proposal that is, that shows the sort of political bias of the MAGA right. They don't want poor people to vote. They don't want people of color to vote because they often don't vote for them.
Speaking of immigration, there was, what was that? It was this Congresswoman, this representative, this politician, she's Caribbean. And it was a reporter ran up to her because this politician, this black politician from the Caribbean, I can't think of her name right now, but they were really pushing against the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is basically where they're going to require you to have an ID. You got to have an ID to vote. You got to have an ID to vote. That's going to stop a lot of the illegals from coming over voting. And Yvette Clarke, yes, Yvette Clarke. Yeah, so they ran up on her and they let her know, yeah, Yvette Clarke, you guys are protesting against the SAVE Act. And, this Yvette Clarke was running around saying it was racist. It's going to stop black people from voting because black people got to get ID. We don't be having IDs and all that bullshit. And then this reporter had some receipts like, hey, CNN did a poll and they said 76% of black people that they polled were for the SAVE Act. And she's like, oh, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. No. She showed it, like, yeah, it's the majority of black people are for that. Then she started babbling. Listen, I want y'all to understand, a lot of us, she's Jamaican, by the way. Yes, many of us are for that. We don't have a problem with you having to have ID. We don't have a problem with that. Listen, foundational black Americans, we're tired of being treated like we're incapable adults. That whole narrative that voter ID hurts black people, no, that's rooted in a low expectation stereotype. Listen, most black adults, most foundational black Americans, we've had IDs. We've always had IDs. Stop this nonsense where we ain't got no ID. It's hard for us. We don't know how to get an ID. We've been here for hundreds of years. We know how to get damn ID. We're the most documented people, man. We go to somebody's grandma's house, your whole family tree's information is under her mattress. We keep ID and paperwork. Let's stop letting these people get that lie off that we don't have ID and don't know how to get it. Bullshit. That's bull. Man, we need ID to work, bank, travel, pick up our kids from school, housing, gun permits, government service. Man, so yeah, I ain't got no problem with the SAVE Act. Yeah, that lie, we can't function in modern society, stop it. No, we're not going to go for that. And listen, voting integrity, ladies and gentlemen, that's a civil right issue. Foundational black Americans, see, we fought and bled and died for the right to vote. We did. And we want to protect that vote from dilution. We don't want people to come diluted. We didn't fight and do all that for some weirdo to pop over here illegally voting and then doing some janky shit against us. We don't want to do all that and then somebody just hop over a border and then they can just vote after all those shit we went through. No. We want to protect the legitimacy of a hard-won right. And we want to make sure that our political voice isn't weakened by frauds or loopholes. You understand? We don't want that. Because we know what the con game is. We see through it. It ain't for us. Let's stop playing. We already know it's a con game. Listen. We understand that unchecked systems invite abuse. If a voting system don't verify citizenship or identity, that opens the door for a lot of non-citizens to come in and influence elections directly or indirectly. And we know that it's a loophole they're trying to use to get these illegals to get out here and vote. They want to use us as proxies so that tethers can come in and start getting the right to vote easily without having to show the right IDs. That's why they're mad, because they couldn't co-opt it. Oh, we thought ahead of the game. You damn right it's trademark. That's not a gotcha. Shout out to the brothers who trademarked Solon. I've been told people we trademarked that and protected it. You think I was going to let the tethers get it? You know they were going to try to get it and flip it, just like the white tea supremacists did Juneteenth. Yeah, Walmart trademarked Juneteenth. So yeah, they done got Juneteenth and co-opted the hell out of it. So you damn right we trademarked Foundation of Black Americans so y'all wouldn't pull that move. You damn right. So is that your gotcha? Gotcha, I got you. No, got you. You didn't get us, got you. You couldn't finesse it. You know? But listen, the Foundation of Black American Delineation Movement, it's powerful, man. This thing, it's affecting politics. That's why they did that whole thing with Mauna Leo.
What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. So we have the great debate happening in America right now, the great debate over voter ID laws. Now, there was a CNN poll that says that I think like 79% of African Americans agree with voter ID laws, and pretty much everybody in America agrees with, you know, the voter ID laws or whatnot. But at the same time, you have some people saying that it's racist. The voter ID is racist. Now, you have a lot of black folks, right, saying that they're attacking the Democrats, saying, oh, you Democrats, you guys don't think we can get IDs. You guys don't think we're, you know, capable of going to the Department of Motor Vehicles to get ourselves an ID. We have IDs. We use IDs for everything. This is not an issue. They're using this to get illegal immigrants to vote. Okay, you got some people that are saying that the voter ID suppression law has nothing to do with African Americans, so we shouldn't worry about it. We should support it, right? Then you got the other people that are saying, listen, voter ID laws is most definitely racist and targeted African Americans because they don't want us to vote. Therefore, they're trying to nitpick every which way they can to suppress the African American vote, utilizing voter suppression, which, in truth, the conservative Republican have been doing since we have been able to vote. Okay, now here's the issue. Here's the issue. Now, are African Americans able to go get IDs and vote? Yes, right? Yes, we are. We can go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and get IDs and all that stuff. We use IDs for everything, right? But is the SAVE Act, because that's what it's called, is the SAVE Act requiring everybody to have a form of proof of citizenship, is that something that is necessary, right? Is it necessary for us to vote? Well, history has shown that our current voting system works perfectly for the most part, right? One of the best in the world, works perfectly, all right? And you cannot vote unless you are a citizen. That's already a law, right? Now, what part of the law suppresses? What is the suppression portion of this law that people who say that, oh, the voter ID law is racist and this and that? Well, there are many first let's just start there. Who votes the most, all right? Who are the ones who get up all the time and go vote? Who makes the decisions in the country for the most part, right? Who does that? Elderly people, old people. Old people tend to participate in the political process way more than young people. So they're the most reliable voters, right? In the African American community, who are the number one voters in the African American community? Old people, right? Also, within that old people, who are the number one out of all old people that get up and go vote? Black women. Right? Black women. All right. So I've set that up. These are all facts. Okay. Now, there are many black women who are old, right? Who, when they were born, they don't have a birth certificate. You see, there's a wordplay happening. There's a wordplay happening here. You got voter ID. You're thinking it's just your regular driver's license, right? No. It's not your driver's license. You think it's your regular government issued ID if you don't have a driver's license. No, that's not it. It's your birth certificate. It's your birth certificate. It's your passport. Now, if you are a woman, right, there's a good chance that you got married and changed your last name. There's a good chance that your birth certificate and the name on your ID are not a match. There's a good chance of that, right? Matter of fact, there's a large population of African-American women whose last names don't match up with their birth certificate names because their name is their husband's name, right? So this voter ID, this voter suppression is the way it's going to work is that when someone goes to the booth to vote, right? When they go there to vote, they're going to run into an issue to where, oh, your name doesn't match this name. You're going to have to go and fix that. You're going to have to go fix that before you can vote, right? And of course, because this is the only day to vote, you're not going to be able to fix that. Therefore, your vote will not count. Okay? That's one, right? Now, they also, within this SAVE Act, they're trying to make it so mail-in voting doesn't work. Now, imagine you being a black woman, right? Or elderly black man who don't have a birth certificate, right? Because you're old. Right? You don't have a birth certificate. You were born you had a wet nurse, right? There's many, and the majority of African-American voters are this demographic, right? Let's say you want to do a mail-in vote, right? You don't want to get up and stand in line because you're old, right? You don't want to stand in line. You like to mail your vote in. You like to get it done early. Well, in this SAVE Act, they're trying to make it so you need extra documentation in order to do that. Meaning the original way of getting a ballot mailed to you and then you being able to mail that out, right? That's not going to work this time because they're trying to change the documentation. So what that means is there's going to be a bunch of elderly people who are not on their internet, who's not watching CNN or any of this stuff, and they know when in voting time, they're going to be like waiting for that letter in the mail so they can vote. And they're not going to receive that letter in the mail. You think they're going to send out the actual proper documentation? No, they're not going to send anything. So that elderly person is going to sit there and wonder why they can't early vote. And that elderly person who can't prove his citizenship with the piece of paper that's going to be mailed to him, because they probably got to go do this and this step and this step. Every step is one individual who had a seemingly easy way to vote is not going to have an easy way to vote. Okay, so that means you're going to be plucking off voters onesies and twosies. It's not about a mass effect. It's about the trickle effect in certain states. And you got to understand this. All this is being concentrated in the southern states, the Republican states, the very same states where white people in their demographic is slowly dwindling. That's why they have gerrymandering. You see all the new black people that's all of a sudden interested in politics, right? Who are now currently taking this opportunity to look at the Democrats as an evil institution that's being racist and don't think that black people can do anything for themselves, while conveniently turning their back on the Republicans who literally have racist neo-Nazi policies that's a disenfranchising and actively trying to take away our political power in this country. Like, it blows my mind. And none of these people who all of a sudden want to campaign for saying we support something that most of us know nothing about, because most people who are, first of all, we all realize that when you call, how many black people you know have ever been polled? So when CNN comes out with a poll, where it come from? Where are the other polls so we can have a consensus on many different polls so we can say, okay, different groups polled and we have this. You got one poll. So that poll is being blasted so that everybody can have something to talk about, right? So now you have a bunch of black folks who are not really involved in politics, don't know anything about politics, don't know the history of black people and our political fight in this country, all of a sudden saying this is not about us. When in fact, it's always been about us. Right? This 13% population that seems to be always 13% population, yet we got trillions of dollars of purchasing power. Either we're a super rich demographic or there's a lot more of us than they want to admit. And it seems like their political actions means there's a lot more of us than they want to admit. There's not that many what you call illegal aliens in this country. That's just not that many. As much as we highlight them, there's not that many. It's black and white folks. And it seems like the black population is much larger than they want to admit. And it just so happens that a lot of these Republican states are former Confederate states that held most of the Africans into slavery, and that's where most of the plantations are. And since most African people are only 100 miles away from their ancestors' former plantation, most of these black people seem to reside in these red states that are currently turning blue. Because now, those African people who still live in these states are having babies, unlike the white folks. Therefore, there's more black folks who can vote. Therefore, the Republicans, it behooves them to do anything they possibly can, including gerrymandering, because keep in mind, all these black people who are now political experts wasn't saying anything when the Republicans were recarving the districts to make it so 5 white people have more votes than 100 black people. They weren't saying anything when governors who won the state weren't allowed to govern because the white politician wouldn't confirm them. You see, they're conveniently not involved while we systematically see white people take away our power to vote. But once a national poll comes out and they get something to talk about, all of a sudden they're political experts and they're going to tell to the masses of people who don't know anything about voter suppression and how it works. They're going to tell you that you should not care about this issue. That's another thing, right? So you got people like Tariq Nasheed, who's now all of a sudden the leader of FBA, right? He's saying, oh, we shouldn't worry about that voter ID stuff. That's not for us. That's for those illegal aliens trying to get them to vote. If you are not a citizen, you can't vote. I challenge anyone to find an epidemic of so-called illegal people voting. I challenge you to find a history of people who are not American citizens voting. You can't. You see, this information that people usually digest and disseminate as experts is usually shallow information. No one read the bill. You don't even know what's in the bill. The devil's always in the details, and the details is within the bill that black people are supporting. So even if there's a poll that says 70-something% of people support this, that's 70. Most of those people don't know what's in the bill. They're just looking at it from surface level. Oh yeah, of course you need ID. Of course. Right? And so the active right-wing administrations are now employing their Coonarians, employing their black people who promote white supremacy and blackface, and all their social media. Now they're all talking about this as if they're experts now. Keep in mind, the same people who are saying you shouldn't care about IDs and it's not for you are the same ones who told you to sit on a couch and not vote. They're the same ones who tell you not to participate, yet they're participating in the active suppression, right? Do you know when people come to the Americas, right, and they gain their citizenship and they vote, they usually vote for progressive policies, liberal and progressive policies. They don't vote for conservative policies because conservative policies are to conserve white supremacy. You see, when we start getting down a little bit further than 3 feet in the water, where all you doing is split splashing, when you got to actually swim in that shit, then you start to realize that most of y'all going to drown when we get down here. Because y'all can't swim and y'all can't hold your breath long enough. And that's the issue we got going on here, right? So all the grifters are now talking about it, but they don't know nothing about politics. If either your vote count or it don't, either one daggone election cycle, you're going to say, what's the point of voting because our vote don't count? Or you're going to say, hey, voting works fine. I don't mind. Let's support this political process. Let's support this political apparatus on voting. Either your vote counts or it don't. Now, history says our vote counts. History says that when black people vote, we make change. So the powers that be that are clearly against us don't want us to vote. As if they can get 1 or 2 of us to sit on the couch, it's a victory. If they can get 1 or 2 of us to go vote for Donald Trump or vote for any right-wing Christian conservative Republican that does not have any black people in America best interest at hand, it's a win. They just need to pluck a little bit because we're talking about numbers here. And when you separate each state, each district, these numbers add up. So black folks, we cannot fall for the propaganda. We can't fall for the word salad. We can't fall for the devil that's inside those details. All right. Anybody telling you to sit on the couch is the enemy to black people. Anybody promoting policies that don't benefit us at all, if they're doing that, they're not for black people. Now, who do new immigrants who come to the country and get their citizenship and get the ability to vote, who do they usually vote for? Or how do they usually vote? They usually, like I said, they vote progressively, right? Black people are progressives. Black people have liberal policies, keyword policies, actual things on the agenda that we actually support, progressive policies, actual things that we support. Everything black people want are progressive and liberal policies. There is not a conservative policy that benefits black people. Yet we have all these new political pundits online got their backs towards the actual enemy, while like clowns attacking those who at least do a semblance of political theater for us. At least where our political power lies, at least we have a semblance of a chance to get something we want if we actually used our damn vote the way we could, the way we should, the way they actively stop us from doing, the way they convince us to not do? If our vote wasn't so powerful and so important, why are we always targeted? If our vote was, if voting didn't matter, why did our ancestors get killed because they dared to go vote? If our vote didn't matter, why were they killing white Jewish people who were going down to the South to help register us to vote? Think about it. History says otherwise. Clearly our vote's important. Now, people who come to the country usually vote the same way we want to vote. So if you're a black person who's all of a sudden took interest on people who come to this country for economic opportunity because the country is currently neo-colonizing their country and stealing their resources so you can enjoy it. So you can go to your Whole Foods and your Costco's and your BJ's and get shit on the cheap so that you can get that. So you can go get your big screen TV and your brand new $1,000 phone and your brand new iPad and your brand new iPhone and your 3D glasses and your smart glass. So you can get all that technology that you enjoy, that you throw in the face of those who don't have the opportunity to get those things. While you're doing that, while you're enjoying all of that, those things that the white man in the suit, the rich white man in the suit goes and steals from those very countries, you shit on those people who are looking for economic opportunity after their country is being destroyed. And then now, when it comes to them wanting to vote, wanting to participate in the political process, you want to make it difficult for them right next to that white man who want to make it difficult for them. You black people are fighting the white man's battle for them. You're putting batteries in the back of white folks so they can say, hey, look, it ain't racist. Black people agree with us too. You guys fall for it every goddamn time. History will show you that everything the Republicans or conservatives, because I know a lot of you guys like to say the Democrats used to use you mean the conservative Democrats. That's what, there you go. Another group of people that don't know about politics. The conservative Democrats, the Dixiecrats, the ones who invented the KKK, those guys who switched to the Republican parties back in the 60s. It's called the Southern Strategy. You can look it up. Instead of researching from your heart and your feelings, how about you do some actual research with some books or some internet links or some shit. All right? So like I said, this voter suppression thing, it's anti-black. Whether you swimming in there 2 feet and you think, oh, I got an ID, or whether you in the deep water and you realize the devil's in the details, and there's going to be a whole bunch of African Americans who don't have a birth certificate to go with their ID, whose name on the birth certificate, if they do one, is different from the one on their ID because they got married. Because black people marry each other at an 80% rate, and black people still form families demographically more than anybody else, even though they like to use demographics and shit to try to screw the data to make us look like we're this and we're that, when in fact it's always the opposite. So yeah, there's a lot of black people online that are now experts, and they support white supremacy and their need to create an ethno-white state like FBA and other unknowledgeable, uneducated African Americans that don't know nothing about politics, and probably first time voting was just a few years ago, and they all in their 50s because they didn't participate when they should have a long time ago. All right, and you got those who are swimming in that deep water and can hold their breath, like me and various others, who will tell you there's no benefit for us to allow something like this to pass. It doesn't benefit us. Even the people that they say are going to benefit from it vote the same way we vote. Meaning the policies that we actually want as African Americans that are progressive and liberal by all its definition would be pushed by the very same people you're trying to stop coming in the country. Even though African Americans have historically fought for the right for these very same people to come to the country and thrive, because we're supposed to be empathetic enough to know that the machine that we currently live in are subjugating the people in their countries and are sanctioning and destabilizing their countries. So we already knew that. That's why we African Americans don't mind people coming to this country to find a better life for themselves, because there's plenty of space on this big ass landmass we call North America. There's plenty of space. The only people that don't think there's plenty of space are them white folks that's running out of white folks. The only people that don't think there's enough space are them white folks that's running out of political power because they don't have the numbers to maintain the political power that they need in order to run everything. And they are on a crunch to steal and stop and slow down any vote that will go against their white supremacist agenda. Anyway, I'm gonna put some clips here. You make your opinion up for yourself, all right? Whether you are for it or against it. Whether you are for it, while after reading and find out what's actually in it, or whether you're against it and you still didn't read it to find out what's in it. Either way, the devil's always in the details. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
It's likely this will be the most important and controversial bill of the year. The Save America Act, which most of you have heard of as the new voter ID law, has already passed in the House and is now headed towards the Senate.
So let's give an objective overview of what this bill actually does. Currently, federal law already bans non-citizens from voting in national elections. But federal law actually defers to each state to set their own requirements for ensuring that non-citizens don't vote, which includes each state making their own rules about voter ID and registration.
Most states don't require mandatory proof of citizenship when you register to vote. Rather, they usually just have a box that you check under penalty of perjury affirming that you're a citizen. When it comes to actually voting, states vary pretty widely on whether they require ID at the polls or not. All of the states here in white generally don't require an ID to cast a vote.
So the Save America Act would set out federal standards for all of this. Under the Act, anyone wanting to register to vote would have to show proof of citizenship in person to a local election official. In most cases, proof of citizenship would require a U.S. passport or a birth certificate.
For those whose last name has changed, for example after marriage, the bill's pretty ambiguous here. You'd either have to get a new updated passport or present something like your marriage license along with a valid photo ID with your old name.
The bill leaves a lot of discretion to local election officials to be satisfied that someone's actually a citizen. And those election officials could face criminal charges or lawsuits if they register a non-citizen to vote.
After you've registered, the bill would also require valid photo ID to actually cast a vote. And regarding mail-in voting, the bill would ban automatically sending mail-in ballots to voters. Instead, you'd have to request a specific application to vote by mail.
So supporters say that the bill is necessary to prevent voter fraud, and that it's relatively normal around the globe to require proof of ID and citizenship to vote in elections. They'd also cite studies that say the vast majority of people agree with requiring ID and proof of citizenship to vote.
But there are a lot of opponents here too. They would say these new requirements disenfranchise eligible American voters, pointing to estimates that say millions of Americans don't have citizenship documents like passports or birth certificates readily available, and that these documents like passports cost money to get, raising questions about the 24th Amendment.
They'd also point to investigations showing that instances of non-citizens voting in federal elections are rare, and argue that this is all just a scheme from Republicans to limit the number of total voters.
Overall, even though this is making headlines right now because it just passed in the House, it's possible this won't actually become law, because at least for now, it's looking like there aren't enough votes in the Senate for it to pass. It's likely this will be the most important and controversial bill of the year. The Save America Act, which most of you have heard of as the new voter ID law, has already passed in the House.
You just stated that the SAVE Act is an attack on civil rights and is racist. Could you just explain that further? Because 76% of Black Americans support the SAVE Act, according to CNN.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, we find it racist because at the end of the day, it's targeting Black communities with a cost burden. We've been through this historically, right? Where we've been prohibited from voting because we didn't know how many bubbles were in a soap bar. And so this is just a new iteration of that, and we're very focused on defeating it.
But if 76% of Black Americans support voter ID,
I don't believe that's 76%.
CNN reported it?
Well, that's possible.
Okay.
But I do not agree with it.
Well, another day under Republican majority, which is another day of anti-Blackness on steroids. Today, the House will vote on the SAVE Act. This is a bill introduced by Congressman Chip Roy, and allegedly is to safeguard Americans' voting eligibility. It is a voter suppression bill. It's no different than the jelly bean test or the poll taxes of the past. An effort to make America Jim Crow again. This is, once again, a solution in search of a problem. It is already illegal for non-U.S. citizens to participate in our elections. So the SAVE Act isn't saving nothing. It's certainly not saving everyday people time. It's making it harder and less convenient for you to vote, putting a burden on people because you won't be able to vote with a real ID or with a state ID. You will have to provide various forms of documentation to prove that you are a U.S. citizen. For example, a passport is one of the things that you might need to provide. Well, 169 million Americans don't own a passport, so they would have to purchase one. That's $130. Your birth certificate. Well, what about married women? 69 million women in this country are married and have changed their name, and their last name does not match their birth certificate. What about our military voters? Your military ID will no longer be a sufficient form of documentation to prove that you are a U.S. citizen. This is going to have a disparate burden on rural voters, on military voters, on married women, on low-income people, on Black and brown folks. This is just another attempt at voter suppression to silence the voices of the electorate, to take away your voice. I will be voting no.
Our country needs nationwide voter ID. Oh, oh, more federal control of our elections. Great. It's not control, it's setting a minimum national standard to preserve the security of our elections. Well, 36 states on their own already require some sort of ID to vote. What are the other 14 doing? You need an ID to buy a drink, to drive a car, to book a hotel, open a bank account, but not to vote? Voting is a sacred constitutional right. Those things are not. It's a right to own a firearm, but it's also federal law that you must show an ID when buying from a licensed dealer. Well, we know there's loopholes for that. Dude, showing an ID is not a huge burden. It is for the 29 million Americans who do not have a non-expired driver's license and the 7 million of those who do not have another form of government ID either. You're essentially making them pay to vote. It's a poll tax. IDs cost money. You need a valid ID for just about anything else in our society. So yes, to be a minimal functioning citizen in our society, you need to pay a couple dozen bucks to have an ID. Stop comparing common sense to historical wrongs. I don't know, but look, the 14 states who don't require an ID to vote have placed the onus on state election workers to verify identities. They verify your registration prior to voting, and then in person they look you up by your name and address and have you sign. And also, what are you protecting against? Voter impersonation? Studies show that's vanishingly rare. Why would someone risk years in prison, memorize someone's full name and address to cast one vote? Well, I'm sure there's many cases that go undetected because the current system is unbelievably flawed, making poll workers match signatures to verify. Most other democracies around the world have voter ID, and if we're not meeting that minimum with IDs, I can only wonder where else corners are being cut, which is why the SAVE Act in front of Congress right now requires voter ID, but also citizenship proof to register to vote. Now that's the big one. That is the big one, which will disadvantage even more voters. So that should be the argument. Yeah, you're trying to make this a voter ID argument, and I still cooked your ass. I don't think so. 86% of Americans agree with voter ID, but it is only one step to secure our elections. One step to disenfranchise voters not favorable to Republicans. You think very lowly of your voters. No, this is about rights. Sure.
The House just passed the SAVE Act, right? And now folks are talking about prove your citizenship in order to register to vote. Okay, but let me say this. My grandparents didn't receive a birth certificate when they were born. They were born without official records during Jim Crow. No hospital paperwork, no documentation, just black babies born into a country that didn't see them as full citizens. So how the are people who come from that reality supposed to now prove their citizenship just to exercise their right to vote? Let's be serious, y'all. We're talking about just show your birth certificate like that was accessible to everybody. It wasn't, especially not for black folks in the South, especially not during segregation. Records weren't kept, or they were kept wrong, or they were lost. So what happens to the elders? What happens to people whose births were never properly documented because of racism policy? Are we really about to create a system where the same government that failed to record their existence is now telling them they can't vote because there's no record? Make that make sense. Because this isn't just paperwork, this is history. This is Jim Crow paperwork problems showing up in 2026, dressed up as election integrity. And I need somebody to explain how that is not a fucking barrier.
Republicans are trying to make it harder for you to vote. Let me tell you how. The Save America Act would require your passport or your birth certificate to match your current name in order to be able to vote. If y'all got married and changed your name, your birth certificate would not match your current name. Nearly 69 million women in America have a birth certificate that does not match their current name. And therefore, 69 million American women would no longer be eligible to vote.
So you're telling me 69 million women don't have marriage certificates? Like, why are they making this harder than what it really is? If you're married, you should be able to provide a marriage certificate that says, hey, I got married, I changed my last name. It's really not that difficult. This is the same government who just made everyone in America get a real ID to fly 2 hours into the next state. And now suddenly it's so hard for people to provide identification. What type of government do we have when we have people in office fighting for people not to show identity to vote? We are supposed to be a proper country. Why do we have people in office who are working against providing identification to vote in elections that affect citizens across the country? Make it make sense. It's really not that hard. No one in office should be against this.
Yeah, Democrats and lost. The Democrats have crossed the line, bro, and hit an all-time low. It just went viral today. Y'all go watch the CNN panel, bro. How they had a big argument on CNN because they sent a black lady to come out here and say this dumbass shit. She come out there and say, she's trying to say that requiring people to have an ID to vote is racist and is disenfranchising the black people because we don't have IDs. Or it's harder for us to get an ID. Or we got a problem getting an ID. Or we have a problem knowing who we are or something. Bro, that's the most... Bro, you know how racist and disrespectful that is? That's why they had a white person come out and say that. They said a black lady to come out and say the most racist, disrespectful, illogical shit I ever heard. That has never, ever been an issue, a problem, or a place of concern in the black community, having an ID. It's never been that. It's never, ever been a problem. Never. Low income has nothing to do with it. A low income person got, what you mean? What you think it take to get EBT? What you think it take to get Section 8 or just get an apartment or get a car? Or just go to the club? Or just go buy a bottle of liquor or just cash a check? What you think it take? Democrats, what you think it take? You don't think we do that stuff every fucking day? You don't think we got a social security number? If we lose our stuff, we can go get it replaced for $5. We can go to the social security office and get a birth certificate or whatever with our social security number. We know what hospital we was born at. Most of us still live around the hospital we was born at. What are you talking about? Bro, that's the dumbest, bro. That really pissed me off. I ain't gonna lie. That was so racist and disrespectful. I can't even, bro, y'all gotta speak up on that. IDs, bro, you think we don't have, you think we got a problem? Everybody got an ID. I don't know one person that don't have an ID. What are you saying? We got IDs. And to even try to push a narrative and try to make a new stereotype, because that's what you're doing. Because you got people of other races looking at that and saying, well, yeah, some minorities, black people don't have access to the DMV to get their IDs, or they don't, come on, man. Don't drag us into no bullshit, bro. We already got enough stereotypes that's negative on black people. And then you gonna do this on Black History Month? Everybody got an ID. Don't ever bro. Y'all gotta speak up on this. This is crazy. Yeah, if you a black liberal or Democrat, bro, I know I know y'all know this is some bullshit too, bro. Talk to your people. Talk to your people, man. That's so disrespectful, bro. That's so disrespectful. That's worse than this is worse than the Democratic governor saying that black kids in the Bronx don't know what a computer is. First we can't use a computer. Now we can't get an ID. Bro, stop fucking playing, bro. Y'all are racist and you got nerves to call conservatives racist, bro. That's why I don't like y'all, bro. That's why I'd never be a Democrat again, bro. Y'all the most racist group, and then you trying to just blame everybody else for racism, and you'll come out and say just the dumbest, racist, ignorant, disrespectful, illogical shit ever. I'm gone, man.
I had lived in Missouri for 13 years. I saw the way that policy worked. I saw the way that policy systematically and systemically undermined African Americans' access to their citizenship rights. But as a nation, we were so focused in on the flames that we missed the kindling. That kindling. Let's talk about some of that kindling at Ferguson. Kindling. 67% of Ferguson's population is African American. In the 2013 municipal election, the black voter turnout rate was 6%. How do you turn 67% of the population into 6% of the voters? Those are numbers from Jim Crow, Alabama. You do it via a series of policies, the ways that you hold your elections, the ways that you craft your ballots. There's a whole series of tricks that you can use to change 67% into 6%. Kindling. Because you begin to think about what it means if you don't believe that you even have a say in who your representatives are. Kindling. Let's talk about the schools. Michael Brown's school system. Missouri rates its school systems. It accredits them on a 140-point scale. Graduation rates, matriculation rates, test scores, the whole 9 yards. And you can get a total of 140 points. How many points do you think Michael Brown's school system got? How many? On 140.
Say 20.
20. That's a good one, Eric. That's a good one. 20 out of 140, right? Anybody else?
10.
10. Whoa. Aren't okay, I believe that's called cheating. 10. 10 out of 140 points for 15 years. What that means then is that the public policy leadership was very comfortable with pulling an entire generation of black children through a school system that could garner no more than 10 points, an entire generation. And then start pulling another generation through, because we're at 15 points from K through 12. Kindling. Kindling. Let's talk about the police. We know that the police are here to protect and serve. Yeah, because I'm going to be doing this throughout, because there's a kind of hymn book that we sing from, right? We know it, right? We know it. The police are here to protect and serve. So in this protect and serve, except in Ferguson, they looked at that black population as revenue generators. So you're doing 26 and a 25, boom, ticket. I don't think you fully stopped at that stop sign. Boom, ticket. Looks like you've got a broken tail light. Boom, ticket. And this is a working class neighborhood. And so when you start hitting this neighborhood, this community, with $50 tickets, $25 tickets, $80 tickets, $100 tickets, and you begin to think about what that means. You pay the ticket or you pay your rent. You pay the ticket or you keep food on the table. You keep the lights on. There's not disposable income here. When you don't pay that ticket, the next time you're doing 26 and a 25, because now there's a warrant out for your arrest. Then you are jailed. And then the entire criminal justice process of fines and court fees and bail are all pulling from this working class black community. By the time when Ferguson blew, those fines and those tickets accounted for 25% of Ferguson's operating budget. 25%. And let me be really clear. Justice was not blind. Justice, in fact, had, what did you call it? Had LASIKs. Because justice was, so if the police would happen to stop somebody white and try to hand them a ticket and go, ooh, sorry, not you. Or if the police officer handed somebody white a ticket and somebody white went in to go then pay the ticket, it was like, what are you doing? I'm trying to pay this ticket. And to tear up the ticket. So you're getting this massive extraction from the working class black population in Ferguson. Kindling. And so as I began to think about this kindling, I began to think about the way that white rage worked. White rage is not about visible violence. We often think of rage as visible. We often think of racism as this visible thing. But white rage is subtle. It is corrosive. It operates through the state legislatures, through Congress, through the judiciary, through school boards. It cloaks itself in legalities. And so I set out, because it's so quiet, it's so subtle, you don't see it. And so I set out to blow graphite onto that fingerprint, to be able to trace white rage throughout time, not all the way back to time immemorial with the dinosaurs, but at least up to the Civil War, all the way through to 2016.
Hi, so I'm away, but there was no way I couldn't come on here and tell you that the SAVE Act just passed in the House and it's moving on to the Senate. And if you're just listening to mainstream media or the typical party line, you might not even understand what a big deal this is and how dangerous it is to our entire country. The SAVE Act is a voter suppression bill dressed up as a voter protection bill. The people who wrote it are trying to trick you, and that starts with the very name of the bill. It is called the Save America Act. And who would vote against saving America? Well, everyone should want to, because this isn't a voter ID bill like it's being sold. It's an election takeover bill by the very people who are worried they're going to lose the election. As written, this bill accomplishes in legislation what Trump and his party have been unable to accomplish in the courts, which is the handing over of our state voting rolls to Kristi Noem's Department of Homeland Security. Trump is currently in lawsuits with over 20 states to get their voter information. He just marched into Fulton County in Georgia to take their voter information. But with the SAVE Act, he doesn't have to do any of that. He doesn't have to fight with states to protect our votes in court because everything will just get handed over to him, and then his administration gets to decide who stays on the voter rolls and who is flagged for removal. Do you think they might coordinate that list with all of the information they take from us on social media or all of the data they stole from us using Doge? Yeah, me too. And not only does this bill hand over all of our private voting information, it also requires that most Americans present a passport or birth certificate in person to register to vote or to update their voter registration. Now, this isn't a Democrat or Republican thing. Only 51% of Americans have a valid passport, and ownership is highest among urban residents. So theoretically, this passport thing would benefit your good old-fashioned coastal elites and their children. And we don't want that either because it's not fair. If you don't have a passport, you're going to have to show your birth certificate, if you can even find your birth certificate, and that birth certificate has to match your current ID. And if you're a married woman in America, that is very likely not to be the case, because most of us were not born with our married names, which would mean we were suddenly ineligible to vote. And to be clear, that goes for anyone who's changed their name. I mean, J.D. Vance? Trump has said that he wants to nationalize elections, something that is totally unconstitutional because the states have always been in charge of their own elections. And Steve Bannon is promising that ICE will surround the polls in November. And this bill that just passed the House would effectively do all of that, including handing the organization in charge of ICE control over the elections. The fact is, Trump's approval ratings are tanking. Republicans know they're in trouble in November. They know they can't win based on what they're doing, so they're trying to make sure they can't lose. We killed the first version of this bill last year because once people understood it, they wanted to stop it. We have to do that again. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to text SAVE to 63033 and tell your senators to reject the Save America Act. Tell them you don't want every state submitting their voting rolls to Kristi Noem, that you don't want to disenfranchise people who don't have $165 to get a passport. Tell them you don't want to tell married women who took their husbands' names that they no longer get to vote. And finally, that you do not think that the federal government should get to decide who gets to stay on the voting rolls. This bill looks reasonable, but it's completely insane. Protecting our elections and making them safe and secure is essential, but that's not what this bill does. So text SAVE to 63033, because the guy who's dependent on the election going his way shouldn't get to decide that the election goes his way. Come on, contact your senators. Let's shut this bill down.
Voter ID or voting fraud in any capacity just isn't a problem. And what this law and then the MEGA Act, which does all the citizenship stuff, plus gets rid of universal mail-in voting, which is extremely popular, which is when you get sent an application in the mail from your Secretary of State's office to sign up to vote by mail, and then you're registered to vote, and you can just do that, and then you'll get your ballot a few weeks later in the mail, fill it out, send it in, you voted. They want to get rid of that because they think it's rife with fraud. It's not. The real reason for voter ID is that it prevents people from voting, because a lot of people don't have identification. They don't have ready access to things like their proof of citizenship documents, because they don't live at home, because they're in safe deposit boxes, or they're just lost. And we're talking millions of people, like 21 million people, just don't have access to these documents. It also, these voter ID laws mean that so many people won't get to vote who are women, because women will, 90% of women who change their marital status also change their last names, whether it's getting married or getting divorced. It is poor people because they can't afford to buy a passport or get a new ID.
I want to quickly explain the SAVE Act, which passed the House and is now going to the Senate. This is the Republicans' idea of voting reform, saying this will keep illegals from voting in our country. Okay. Doesn't happen. It is already illegal to vote in this country if you're not an American citizen. But they want to raise the bar so high that they will make it extremely difficult, particularly in rural states like Maine, where I live. You have to bring a passport, something that can prove that you are a legal citizen of this country in every time you vote, or you request an absentee ballot. For women, you could use your birth certificate, but if you change your name, or maybe you're not a woman, maybe you change your name for other reasons, your birth certificate is no longer legal because it doesn't apply. You can't use your real ID, which many people jump through a lot of hoops to get this. And this is specifically to make it harder for you to vote, and harder every time to vote. When's the last time you went and dug up a birth certificate? It takes a long time. Or when did you find out? How about if you find out your passport just expired? People call our office all the time with that issue. Suddenly, you can't vote. They also want to collect all the voter files from every state and have possession of all that data. In the Constitution, voting is a state-by-state right and controlled by the states, but not in the eyes of this president. He wants to have all your data, Social Security, your tax information. He would love your voting data because then he could find out exactly were you with him or were you against him, and could he use that as another way to block you, not to mention the footage he got of you standing on the street corner protesting last week. So this is just a bad piece of legislation. It is not necessary. It would really harm women. Women vote in bigger numbers. Women are less likely to vote for the president. Is there any correlation here? You betcha. So this is just a no. It did pass the House because the Republicans control the House. It's going to have a much harder time in the Senate, but we got to make sure we block it there.
So I realize that this isn't brand new. I know people have been talking about the SAVE Act stuff already, but I think it is extremely important to actually explain why this is bad in a way that makes sense to normal people, not just the political jargon you might hear. And just FYI, I too am normal people. I'm just passing along the way that was best for me to understand it. So I don't say normal people in a superior type of way. Anyways, on the surface, this bill sounds reasonable. They frame it like, we just want to make sure only citizens are voting. I mean, that's cool, because I don't think anybody's arguing for non-citizens to vote. That's not really the debate. The problem is this is just another example of Republicans manufacturing a crisis that barely exists. There is no evidence of widespread non-citizen voting swaying elections in this country, not in any meaningful way. It's been investigated, it's been audited, studied, and every single time it seems like it comes back to the same thing. It's extremely rare. So we're creating new laws, new hurdles, new barriers for a problem that doesn't actually exist at scale. And when you dig into how this would work in real life, it's not clean at all. It's not simple. It's not just show your ID and move on. This means people now need specific documents to prove citizenship, birth certificates, passports, paperwork that a lot of people do not have easy access to, even if you do. Especially married women who change their last name, especially older people, especially low-income families, especially people who've moved a lot, especially people whose records aren't perfectly updated in government systems. So what ends up happening is not election security. What ends up happening is eligible American citizens getting tripped up by bureaucracy, delayed, rejected, confused, discouraged. That's how voter suppression works in modern times. It's not, you're not allowed to vote. We're going to make it just annoying enough, just complicated enough that some of you fall through the cracks. And that is not an accident. That is the whole point. I mean, think about it, guys. We keep seeing the same exact patterns over and over again. Republicans take something that barely happens, turns it into a national crisis, and then uses that fake outrage and that fake urgency to pass policies that mostly just make people's lives harder. Non-citizen voting, not a real widespread issue. Just like trans kids in sports, not a real widespread issue. These are tiny, statistically insignificant things that are being treated like they're tearing the country apart. Meanwhile, the real problems that actually affect millions and millions of Americans every single day, like healthcare costs, childcare, medical debt, housing, all of those get ignored because those problems require real solutions, and real solutions don't create easy culture war talking points. So instead, we get the laws that sound common sense, but if you don't look too closely, because when you do, you just realize they mostly punish regular people, especially women, especially marginalized communities, especially people who already have to jump through hoops just to exist in this system. That's why this matters, guys. Not because anyone supports non-citizens voting. That's ludicrous. Not because anyone thinks election integrity doesn't matter. It's because this is about power. It's about controlling who gets to participate and making it harder for certain people to show up at all. You don't protect democracy by shrinking the number of people who can realistically access it. So I would say no more pretending that this is about safety when it's really just about control.
Just give me 90 seconds. If you've changed your name, if your birth certificate doesn't match your ID, if you don't have a passport sitting at home, this concerns you. The SAVE Act is not about election security. It's about voter suppression. With Trump's numbers plummeting and Democrats winning red districts, he knows, just like we know, his policies serve his donors better than workers. But instead of changing the policies, he wants to change who gets to participate in elections. So married women whose names don't match their birth certificate, or divorced women, or naturalized citizens, or working Americans without passports, all will have to go through more hoops to avoid problems. And no, your driver's license is not going to be considered acceptable ID. We all want fair elections, but actual voter fraud is microscopic. The SAVE Act is not vote protection, it's vote prevention. And they know they don't have to persuade more people to vote for them if they could just prevent the opposition from voting at all. Because when they can't win on ideas, they're going to try to win with obstacles. And history is very clear about what kind of leaders change the rules instead of earning votes. So hear me clearly. We hope this bill fails, but if it passes, we don't panic, we prepare. So if your name is changed or hyphenated, get your documents now. If you don't have a certified copy of your birth certificate, request one now. And if you can get a passport, go get one, and check your voter registration early, not the week before the election. They are counting on your frustration, confusion, and you just saying, this is too much. Do not give them that satisfaction. If they raise the bar, we clear it. If they build obstacles, we go around them. Because this country does not belong to politicians who fear voters. It belongs to voters who don't fear politicians. Remember, I'm not the dark left. Together, we're the dark left. Please join me in helping to call out the bullshit and bring some sanity back to the conversation.
Can you take out your driver's license? Mr. Scott has his out. If you took yours out, I'm looking at mine. Yeah. What we're talking about here is, does your driver's license tell us where you were born? It does not. Does it?
No, not in the state of Wisconsin.
Mr. Scott, no. Yours doesn't either. Because what we're talking about is registration. You cannot use this ID to register to vote under your bill. Is that correct, Mr. Stiles?
You could not use your ID. That would be an accurate statement.
Chairman Stiles, do you have a passport?
I personally do.
You do have a passport.
I'm part of the roughly 50% of Americans.
You're roughly 50% of Americans have a passport because you travel. About 50% of Americans don't travel internationally. They don't have that money. Is that right? One of the reasons you have to have a certain amount of money to be able to travel internationally to get that passport, to pay for that passport. Is that correct?
There is a charge to
there is a
U.S. passport.
21.3 million American citizens of voting age don't have ready access to citizenship documents. This is ready access. We already discussed earlier the fact that this bill, you have changed the enactment date of this bill to go in effect as soon as it is signed into law. And if that happens, then this 21.3 million American citizens who might not be prepared for a future in a few weeks, in terms of Texas, who might want to, they're excited about the race, they're excited about the Republicans, senators who are running against each other and battling it out, they're excited about the Democrat primaries, they want to get involved, they want to register to vote. They might be on one of the 21.3 million Americans who don't have ready access to citizenship documents. That's what we are concerned about, is that by rushing this into law, you are going to prevent so many people from being able to register to vote. And that's been acceptable. When you say how many immigrants are too many voting, I'd flip the question and ask you, how many eligible citizens are you worried about being turned away because you are rushing something like this into law? Do you care?
By requiring photo ID, you make it harder for reliably Democratic voters to cast their ballots. Reliably Democratic voters, of course, are people of color. If you're old, if you're poor, if you're sleeping on somebody's couch, if you don't own or rent, it's almost impossible to prove your place of residence with or without a photo ID. That means you can't vote. If the SAVE Act passes, you can't vote. In Trump's world, people who couch surf, people who are homeless, live in their car, people who don't have a car or a driver's license or a passport, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. They believe that. They don't believe everybody should vote. This isn't about making certain only citizens vote. This is about making it harder for certain citizens to vote. Black people, Latinos, poor people. And it goes back to Karl Rove and George W. Bush at the beginning of this century. They were the ones who started all this by perpetuating the lie of voter fraud. Non-existent voter fraud. They forced the Department of Justice to prosecute non-existent voter fraud in order to convince enough people we need to pass laws that will suppress the Democratic vote. If the SAVE Act ever became law, ordinary citizens would have to produce a birth certificate. Do you know where your birth certificate is? Do you even know how to get your birth certificate? You'd have to produce a passport. Do you have a passport? Poor people don't have passports. Or you're going to have to produce a real ID compliant document in order to register to vote. If you look at Florida, you know how hard DeSantis has made it for people of color or poor people to get the proper documentation to vote.
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan!
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.